I think because I'm like, preventing cancer, it gives me and I'm being a cancer survivor, I feel like it's giving me a little bit of a force field, protecting me from judgment. But now I kind of feel like, oh, screw that. I don't even need the force field anymore. I'm just like, I love ass jokes. I love like just
We
this
all have
whole,
them. We all need them. They all need to
yeah,
be healthy.
yeah. We all have colons. We got it. We gotta like keep, yeah. We
1, 10, 100.
Brooks, hello. Thank you for joining me today.
Glad to be here, Eric.
Where does this day find you physically and mentally?
I'm in my home office in Raleigh. Had some good caffeine this morning. Feeling great.
Good, good, good. So I know this conversation started from something I wrote on LinkedIn about my own faulty wiring when it comes to happiness and joy. And you wrote a really nice note to me that was surprising about how you, I'm reading my notes, spent 4 years of rewiring yourself to feel joy. And so I'd love to hear about that. I guess start us with, where were you 4 years ago?
Well, 6 years ago, I left my company with a colon cancer diagnosis and did 6 months of surgeries and chemo to kind of get through the surgery. When I went through that, I was, coming off of 16 years being the CEO of a 50-person company and having, a lot of, a lot of happiness. Still, it was sort of, I was, building my career, but I was also traveling the world. I did have a, great relationship. I had a lot of amazing things. I was happy in my career, but also had a lot of stress. I remember distinctly many times, driving home after a day of like 10 hours of 30-minute back-to-back meetings, just fantasizing about sipping that first glass of red wine and being able to finally like kick back and like let the stress like steam off of me.
Yeah.
And of course, and I was doing that like 5 days a week. So
Yep.
splitting a bottle of wine with my husband after work. And I knew I should probably cut back on that, but also felt like all my peers were doing that and not that big of a deal. And of course, getting colon cancer, that was a takeaway that maybe that was a factor. Maybe it was the stress. I don't know. But now I was motivated to heal and take care of myself and get involved with nonprofits. On some level, I felt like, oh, I have made it. I've arrived. Now I'm like in my post-career life. Now I can spend all my time doing good. I'm going to be happy, now for sure. And I did do some pretty cool stuff. And I had found purpose, which was amazing. But then fast forward 2 years later, with purpose, with free time, with my health, with, financial security, with kind of everything I wanted, and appreciation for life, all the good things, I was still feeling a lot of anxiety and just not feeling joyful. I remember the moment I was driving to a retreat in Esalen, which is in Big Sur in California. It's like kind of one of the original, like very woo-woo retreats. And just driving along this beautiful coast and feeling, I was like, am I excited or am I anxious? And I think I'm anxious and I have no reason to be anxious. Why in the world would I be anxious about to go off and like write and like soak and be in nature? Why am I not joyful?
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of all of this work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're famous now for colonoscopies and colon cancer.
Yes.
I like that. Like, that's what you're known for. And I think in some ways it's a surprising admission. It's also not a surprising admission at all, frankly, that you would have a lot of career success, a huge health scare, and come out of the huge health scare well and okay, and still be looking for something and still not have the thing. And so it sounds like it took you a little while to understand that you still weren't finding the thing that you were looking for.
Yeah.
What steps did you take after that to kind of work on yourself or think about what some of the issues might be?
Yeah. Well, that weekend was like kind of the first step in a long process. So I went to that. I had decided that I was going to take like 6 months to kind of not do anything, to rest fully. I had been doing a lot of work, on the Lead from Behind project and getting Ryan Reynolds to get a colonoscopy. And again, really amazing thing. But again, stressed out by the whole thing, depleted. And I was like, this time I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to think about what's my next project. So, and then funnily enough, I'm thinking maybe while I'm resting, I'll write a book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. I mean, even this whole thing, right? Like, I think even in my message I sent you is like, as if I don't have enough happening, I'm just going to start talking to people and recording it. So
For
yeah,
a podcast.
I get that. Yeah. It's like when you're wired away like you do and you don't feel alive or,
Yeah.
you
My
know,
restful state will be writing a book and
yeah,
having never
exactly.
written anything, having no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to start writing.
Totally get it.
Like the
Totally, of course.
ridiculousness of that. As
Yeah.
I've told this story a couple of times, they were like, and you never were writing. I'm like, yeah, I was just going to write a book. So actually that was my intention for that week. It was a writing workshop and it was a meditation workshop. So I was like, I'm going to decide if I'm going to write a book, kind of get warm up a little bit, see if I like it. And I was talking to another participant as she was asking me about my intention, and I told her I was going to write a book. And I also said, and I'm feeling quite anxious right now. And I'm realizing that if this feels like a very big decision to write a book, and it almost feels like it's the same level of decision as like having children. And she kind of she laughed at that a little bit. She was like, she was writing a book. She didn't think it was that big of a deal, actually. But she was like, that's kind of interesting. You think it's such high stakes to write a book. And so and I was thinking about that. I thought I was surprised at her surprise. And so one of our exercises in this workshop was to do what's called morning pages, which it's a simple exercise. Basically, just in the first thing in the morning, before you go to bed, you get a journal and you put on a timer for 10 minutes and you just write whatever's on your mind. And it could be anything, but you can't you basically just had to write something for 10 minutes.
The stream of conscious, pen can't leave paper.
Exactly. Just to kind of get you going. So in the morning, my first morning pages, I was like, what am I going to write about? Well, maybe I'll write about why am I anxious about writing a book or putting my words down. And that was the beginning of like this crazy experience that happened all week. I was like, well, what am I afraid of? I was like, I'm afraid of writing down my thoughts. And I was like, well, why are you afraid of that? And I was like, well, that I won't like what I'm going to write. I was like, well, what are you afraid of that? Why? I kept kind of thinking, why? Why are you afraid of that? And I was like, well, I'm going to write something that is scary, or embarrassing or shameful.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what might that be? I kept going until in a way, it opened a portal as I kept digging in of what are the things that you might write that you are afraid of writing or exposing? And that simple exercise, I started writing and digging deeper into what are the things you might write down that you're afraid to write down that are because it feels like they're permanent or I have to answer for them or yep. I don't know. And it was this exercise that, kind of accidentally brought me into helped me access a whole bunch of shame that I had not really been recognizing, that had been building up for so long.
Yeah.
And that week I kind of kept doing these morning pages and kept following the thread. And it was one of the most emotional, I was starting to write stuff where I wanted to throw up as I wrote it.
Wow.
And I was sobbing and felt nauseous. I was getting into the scariest, most awful statements, fears, beliefs, just the junk.
This is self-driven. This is you in a room, in a bed by yourself. You're not working with
I just started writing with morning pages and it just poured out of me the next 3 days of some real dark stuff that had been in there for a long time.
Sounds like a good start for a book.
I know. Well, I have those journals and I haven't looked back at them.
Yeah. I know.
I'm
kidding,
not as
but
scary.
it probably is. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. But the thing that was so awesome, 3 days in of this, I was just so wrung out emotionally. And I was thinking, I'm supposed to be at Esalen having this great woo-woo time. And I feel like crap, just dark and awful. And I thought, I hope there is some benefit to this because I just now feel depressed. This is not great. This is awful. I don't know why I'm even doing this to myself. And then this amazing thing happened. It was the last day. And I've been there for a few days now and was going to leave that afternoon. And that morning I just remember I was sitting alone. When I decided not to go to the last set of sessions, I was just eating at breakfast on the cliff, like looking at the waves in the distance. Esalen is just beautiful. It's just a beautiful, very magical place. And I was just thinking, gosh, this is so beautiful. Like, oh my God, I like this moment, I wish I could bottle it. And I was thinking, I thought, what can I do to capture this moment? I was like, maybe I'll describe it. So I started writing out everything I saw. I said, well, maybe I should draw it. So I started drawing it. And then I was like sad that I was going to leave Esalen and like forget this moment. And and there was something about that where it was almost like I started becoming extra. I started noticing everything and everything slowed down. And I felt this unbelievable sense of gratitude and love for the world. I was eating something. I think I had like it was like, I don't remember. It was like, it was something, it was like Nutella. Like they had something on the buffet that was like Nutella. And I remember having a lick of the Nutella off my spoon. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best tasting Nutella I have ever had. And I was just thinking, this, like the smells were elevated. The taste was Nutella, like it was elevated. I was just like almost getting high on life. And then I remember walking to the lawn, just thinking, this is so beautiful. This is amazing. So much love and joy. And I sat on the ground in the grass and I was like, I have never smelled grass. And so I flipped over and rubbed my face into the earth. And I was like, the smell is amazing.
You touched grass. Like that's the thing. It's like people need to touch grass. You touched
I
grass.
know.
There you go.
And then I remember a fly landed on my finger. I'm like, where'd you come from, little fly? Like, oh, you're so cute. It was like I was high. And It was like the most overwhelming sense of joy. And it lasted for like a few hours. And then I kind of kept journaling. And one of like takeaways actually from that experience, I felt very lucky to experience like that intense, joyful, blissed out kind of state. I my takeaway was like, if I can dump the fear and the shame, I was like almost at these the visualization was like two big tanks. And they're both filled with liquid. And one is filled with fear and shame, liquid. And then the other one is sort of love and bliss and joy. And they're connected by they are connected in some small valve. And the more I can dump one, the more the other one can fill up.
Yeah.
But the more one is full, if the fear and shame is full, it's going to be very hard to fill the joy and bliss tank. And that every day little drip drops are going in to both, or particularly the fear and shame. And you got to continuously kind of dump it, get it out so that you can get the other tank activated.
Yeah. So it sounds like journaling was the fear dumping mechanism. For you.
Journaling was how I did it at Esalen. And it was like the combo. I don't think if I was just sitting in my like guest bedroom or my office trying to journal, I would have had the same effect. It was kind of getting out of my environment, getting in other environments and kind of having the right conditions so that I could do it. And actually the other thing I did is with the morning pages, you had to share what you wrote with somebody. So I had to read these journal entries aloud to a stranger. And I think actually that was good because it was sort of like I had to face it. And I was actually have the other person say like, wow, that's intense. You're lovable, give you a hug. It kind of helped me like make it real and also neutralize the stuff that I was writing.
Yeah. Well, I think the openness in that process is like the feature, right? My friend Eric Severinghouse said I interviewed last week, and I don't know what order all these will come out, but the thing I'd said to him, and I will say to you, is I think the single greatest service that entrepreneurs can do to other entrepreneurs is talk about this because it's a universal experience. And we all inadequacy and hopelessness and fear and whatever it might be in different ways based on who we are, where we came from, who our parents were, who are, right. But it's universal. It's never straight up and to the right for everyone. Right. And so talking about this is kind of my purpose with this thing that I'm doing. And I appreciate that you would share in this way. And so that was 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. That was step one of a rewiring as you've described it. Yeah. And so how did you operationalize that process?
It gave me kind of like the belief that I could feel like, it's like, what does love and joy, bliss actually feel like? That is like not mediated by drugs or anything else,
Yeah.
And it continued with that's kind of when I started, I had various therapists. You know, I really wasn't under therapy for a while. I thought like, I don't have any shame. I don't have any problems. Everything's great. And I think this helped me realize like, oh no, everything is not great. You hid it all from yourself. So you do have actually a lot to talk about.
Yes.
So I started with therapy, but what helped was, I mean, I learned the concept of self-love and compassion. I started to realize it was sort of like I did a diagnosis basically of like, well, you don't love yourself and you're not compassionate. You're pretty hard on yourself. And I started to realize that kind of what the problems were. That doesn't just because you know what your kind of false beliefs are, doesn't mean you can create a new set of beliefs just because you want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just
Yep.
because you want to be compassionate to yourself doesn't mean you just are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think the next step was connecting with my body. I was like, I can't think my way through this. You know, I'm smart. I could definitely know how to strategize and think, but it was like, I can't actually think through it. I have to feel my way through it. I have to reconnect with my like emotions actually. It's like the first thing actually after that was like, I need to learn how to cry. I have to be able to cry. You know, no one can really cry on demand, but I've got to make it easier to cry and not feel shame when I cry, and just know that crying is like getting your body back into homeostasis.
Yeah.
See it as like a useful thing. And so crying was a kind of almost, it's a bodily kind of thing, connecting with your body. There was this one guy who, John Amaral, he does something called network chiropractic and worked on like Gwyneth Paltrow. There's like, he's one of the episodes of that Goop thing on Netflix a few years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
I
pretty
know what you're
freaky
talking about.
looking. The stuff that John Amaral and folks like him do, they like make you almost do like the worm on a table. I mean, it's really weird. They like touch your neck and you're like writhing, you know, like you're having an exorcism.
Yeah.
And I was like, weird. I want to know what that's about.
I want one of those.
Yeah. Actually, so I actually hunted him down and signed up for a session with him. And I was on a table with him for 2 hours, and he did not get me like doing the worm because he was like, you are like a brain with your body being dragged behind it.
Yeah.
And we spent those 2 hours simply trying to get me to cry. So it sounds like bad. He's just trying to make me cry, coming up with every like traumatic thing he could think of to make me cry. But it was almost to kind of get decongested, you know, emotionally. Learning to cry, getting connected to my body, and actually I ended up doing a lot of that spinal network chiropractic with these folks out in Asheville that do that. I would go out to Asheville like once a month and do a session. And before I knew it, I actually was doing the worm on the table. It's super weird. I was like screaming with like 6 other people in the room and like yelling and just like writhing around. It's very embarrassing, but it was like a cathartic kind of and super weird experience that you would do kind of on command with a stranger. Very weird.
That sounds bizarre.
It's totally bizarre. You got to kind of trust it. And but it's like, I don't know. I was like, I just need to connect with my body. I can't think my way through it. I can't have a lot of shame. I want to connect with my body. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm certainly not so I guess I have two sort of comments or observations. One, isn't it wild being diagnosed by someone? You're like, well, I'm doing fine. I got it all together. And like, oh, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I got some issues or whatever, but I don't have like deep problems. Like I remember going to see my therapist with like, hey, yeah, I just want to be better at my work, be better. And I'm sure like 30 minutes in, she was like, okay. Right. And, you know, she just kind of had to work on me and she cracked me wide open. It took a little while, but she cracked me wide open and was like, oh, yeah, okay. I clearly have issues. So that's observation one. The other observation that I absolutely believe is the physicality of your mental health and the physicality of your emotional health. And it can take a lot of different shapes, right? A lot of people work out until they're about to die. A lot of people get weird neck massages that make them do the worm in Asheville, but it's all kind of like the same thing, right? It's like it's all one piece and it all has to be working together.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's amazing. I mean, getting connected to my body has been like my theme for like 2 years. Yeah. And it's just like, how do I turn my brain off and like trust my body? I think another thing I did that's been very helpful is hypnotherapist. Hypnosis. I do hypnosis once a month now, and it is great. It's probably the most effective ongoing thing that I've been doing of kind of, it's
Really?
almost like a meditation. You don't actually, it's not like you are anesthetized.
Yeah.
You are more in a meditative state. You know where you are, but you're just like, I don't know. It's almost like you're in that weird dreamy state where you are about to fall asleep, where you know you are, but your brain is like doing all kinds of like funny stuff. Only you're more in control. It's just much more easy to like create a world or like, I don't know, just activate your imagination. And
Yeah.
in that state, you can kind of have a memory that's kind of faint and feels not important, kind of emerge, and you have to talk about it, thinking like, not that important, probably not what I'm looking for, but whatever, I'll talk about it. And
Yep.
then you realize that's exactly what you need to talk about.
Yeah.
And then actually, that is actually a source of trauma and a belief that is still affecting you today.
Yeah.
And by like going through and sort of reliving that little experience and having a different outcome is a really powerful way of kind of changing those deep-seated beliefs that you almost don't have access to the memory that caused those beliefs. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
The memory that caused the belief, right? Like to me, that's been an unlock over the past couple of years. And it's, why am I the way that I am? Well, let's take one ingredient, my parents. Well, why are they the way that they are? And they're the way that they are, and they raised me in the way that they raised me, which helped me be. And yeah, once you just start unwinding all of those things, you don't get enlightenment, but you start to understand, and you can start to like have visibility to like, oh, well, I'm this way in part because of, I grew up and it was like this. And the reason it was like that is because my dad had this. You can kind of peel it all the way back. And like that is similar experience for me. Not through hypnosis, but yeah, it's like the memory that causes the belief, I think is the phrase that I really latched on that you said. And it makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, those can be super powerful. There's a reason I still have those memories. I remember very little about my childhood, but that was one of the things I was journaling actually. Once I was in the habit of journaling, I was like, what is every memory I can think of? I was just writing out all the memories, like 2 sentences of each memory. There might have been 50. And I was like, what percentages are positive versus negative? I was like, well, most of them are negative.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's just interesting to think about which of those, why do I remember that? Because it's useful to me today. There's something from that memory that I'm still calling back to, which is why I remember it.
Yeah.
So the last thing, kind of how did I get to like joy, is this past year has been the most joyful year, like where my baseline has been a lot higher of joyful than it really has ever been. I think it was like, I think about it as a chart, of course, being an entrepreneur, everything's a chart. Like I was like starting where, you have your baseline, and basically you've got to go from like negative, bar of like anxious. Then you have to get to neutral where you're like at peace, basically, you're not waking up anxious, but you're like, whatever. I'm not like happy, but I don't feel bad, but I don't feel actively good.
Yeah.
So you have to get to neutral first. And then on that, you can start to like add the positive energy. And so the first couple of years was really kind of rooting out anxiety and like getting rid of that. And then I was like mostly in a neutral place. And I felt that's not really good enough. I want to be feeling like awesome. And I wrote an article about this in TBJ actually last year. And the key part, honestly, was playfulness. I was thinking, how do I get to joy? I was like, what do the kids do? Like they play. I was like, how do I like activate some of that? And so an example I was like, okay, well, what's holding me back from being so more playful? And I was like, well, shame again. Like an example is I would play my husband and his friends, our friends, like when we get together on these like group vacations, we often do some karaoke. It's like a theme of our trips.
Oh, yeah.
And I hated it. My song, I'd be like whispering.
Oh, dang.
It was the most painful thing. And I also would feel shame. I'm like, this is supposed to be fun. Why can't I have fun? Why can't I just go with it?
Yeah.
And I was like, what's the reason I can't just like belt it out? Like we all know you don't have to be good, but like, why can't I even enjoy this? And so I ended up taking singing lessons for 6 months. And I was like, I gotta overcome this. At least I need to it's not to become a good singer. It's just to like have the exposure therapy and just to kind of like get over whatever the thing is that's preventing me from enjoying karaoke. So singing lessons is what I did.
Yeah.
And I now I have a great time. I sing all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say we got to do a karaoke night because I love karaoke. That problem you have, I do not have that
You do
problem.
not have that. Yeah.
I got other problems, believe me.
Yeah. That's
Um,
not one of them. I mean, now I tell ass jokes, like I started Worldclass,
well, you got an ass hat right behind you.
Yeah. Like, I've always had to be so professional in my life, because I have running and, I have a professional brand, enterprise brand. We got to be like
Yeah.
professional. And to realize like, oh, I love ass jokes. I love being a little off color. I always have loved
Just
that.
like
I love swearing,
the candor and humor that you use to talk about colonoscopies and have for a long time has always been really fun. Your brand and your personality. And I think that's
Yeah,
great.
I think because I'm like, preventing cancer, it gives me and I'm being a cancer survivor, I feel like it's giving me a little bit of a force field, protecting me from judgment. But now I kind of feel like, screw that. I don't even need the force field anymore. I'm just like, I love ass jokes. I love ass, I love like just
We
this
all have
whole,
them. We all need them. They all need to be healthy.
yeah, we all have colons. We got it. We gotta like keep. Yeah, there's so many. Believe me, you should go if you go to our website worldclassclothing.com. The secret is you go to the FAQ, and there's so many Easter eggs in our FAQ.
All right, I'll check it out.
Actually, all of the there's all the copy has been so much fun to write. It's a joy to read all the different words that have the word ass in it or could have the word ass in it, and we use them all.
Yeah, that's great. I was flipping through the site and like got to the bottom and it said something like "You've reached the bottom, our favorite part" or something
Yeah,
like that. And I was like,
exactly.
well done by someone. That was pretty nice.
Yeah. So I don't know, just having and being, having just, I guess kind of my point is that this past year I've been feeling really great. I've been trying to figure out who am I, what brings me, like, what is fun, what is funny, what was funny to me when I was 8, is probably still funny to me now. And,
Yes.
and just, I need to throw off just what do adults do, that I don't know. I just got to like kind of go back to being the inner child and knowing that I can do that. And there's like a lot of fun that is waiting for me if I can do that and build, and do it with friends, build more community and just being silly, like kind of the silly person I've always been and just felt like it's inappropriate or not professional, not mature. And I'm like, fuck that. That's how I can have a lot of joy in my life.
And you're doing it for good. Like you're a voice for something that's really important that is, I don't know, awkward for some people to talk about, I guess. I don't know. And you're raising money for the Lineberger Cancer Center. Like those are all,
so we can like get some folks who have a lot of high barriers to getting colonoscopies, or putting money towards getting those barriers down, whether it's like buying them a day off of work or buying them an Uber ride or a translator to their colonoscopy.
Yeah, that's great.
And Lineberger has done a great job kind of figuring out how to spend the money really well. And so we're supporting them because we trust that it's going to go to a really good place.
Yep, it will. That's an organization that my family and I support too. Mm-hmm. So that's they do a really good job. I will wrap us up by telling you that my wife is getting a colonoscopy. I think I'd already exchanged messages with you, and like a couple days later, she was like, you're not going to believe this, but I'm getting a colonoscopy. I was like, well, I know one person that will be very happy, and I'm actually talking to her. So it was just a very funny kismet kind of thing. It's like that.
If you get some stuff, every purchase comes with these little stickers. One says ass on it. And what she should do is put that ass sticker on her butt cheek for her as a Easter egg for her doctor. Open up the gown for
she could just like write a little message back there or whatever.
Yeah, she should definitely write them a note as well.
Oh, that's funny. Brooks, we can leave it there. I really appreciate you taking the time to share all this and talk about your journey and your happiness and your joy and kind of the ups and downs. I do want to ask you one more question. And I should have prepped you with this, but I'll ask you it anyway. What music have you been listening to lately?
I have been, let's see, Spotify said that my top was Slack Wax.
I love it. I love it. This is like my self-serving portion of this. Like I have an insatiable new music appetite. And so I'm just like trolling for something new to listen to.
Yeah. Slack Wax, Close to My Fire.
Right. Slack Wax. I will listen to it. That's Brooks Bell, co-founder at Worldclass, colonoscopy enthusiast.
Get your colonoscopy, people. And colonoscopies prevent colon cancer. Do not wait any days past your 45th to get your colonoscopy, and you will save your own ass.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of the 1-10-100 Show. I'm your host, Eric Boggs. Thank you to our production team of Rachel Velasquez and Danny Chu, research team of Benjamin Rogerson and Heine Blargwood, screaming in the intro and outro provided by the Boggs children, Thomas, Catherine, and Barbara. We'll see you next time.